James's eyes flicked to mine, his grip tightening on his glass. Ethan leaned in, a slow, knowing smirk playing on his lips. The air between us was thick, charged with something unspoken. A choice lingered in the space, and I was ready to make it. Before we dive in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It only takes a second, but it makes a huge difference and ensures you won't miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. I won't lie, I've been aching for it. Too many nights alone. Too many mornings untouched. My husband has been gone for months, working a contract job out of state, and at first I thought I could handle it. I was wrong. A woman has needs, and mine are burning, twisting inside me, growing worse every day. I wake up restless, my skin tingling, my thighs clenching, consumed with need before I even open my eyes. I need more than my own hands. I need to be wanted, claimed. Lately, I know exactly who I want. James is older, strong. My neighbour across the street in our quiet suburban cul-de-sac for years. Quiet, controlled. The kind of man who should know how to take what he wants. But he doesn't. Ethan, on the other hand, is restless, cocky, eager his friend's son, crashing with James for a while during a summer break. He watches me, waiting for a moment, or maybe just for permission. I don't want subtle. I want hands on me, mouths on me, bodies pressing me down until I can't think. I took a slow sip of my drink. The condensation slick between my fingers. James was focused. Ethan was restless. And I was ready to stop pretending. No more waiting. I've never liked playing games. Some women flirt, drop hints, wait to be pursued. Not me. I see what I want, and I go after it. When James wiped the sweat from his brow, his muscles flexing under his shirt while tinkering in his garage, I didn't just watch. I gave him something to look at. I stepped out onto my front lawn, my dress swaying just enough to tease the shape of my body. The summer sun was hot in our suburban neighbourhood, and I let it kiss my skin, making me glow. James glanced up as I approached, dragging a hand through his hair. Hard at work, I mused, stopping close enough for him to feel my presence, just outside his open garage door. He nodded, wiping his hands on a rag, just keeping busy. I tilted my head, dragging my gaze over him slowly, deliberately, letting him feel it. You do a good job keeping things in shape. Strong hands, steady work. James cleared his throat, shifting on his feet. Careful, guarded. Well, someone has to. I took a step closer, trailing a fingertip along his arm, barely touching, watching his reaction. They'd feel even better on something softer than car parts. His breath caught for a second, his fingers twitching like he wanted to grab me, pull me in. But he didn't. He swallowed. You need something fixed. I almost laughed. Fixed, I needed something broken, shattered, ruined. I let my fingers drag across his stomach, slow and deliberate, waiting to see if he'd stop me. He didn't, but he didn't take the bait either. My patience had limits. As I turned away, I felt eyes on me. Ethan was watching from the driveway, leaning against James's pickup truck. He didn't even try to hide it. His gaze hungry, eager, ready to do whatever I wanted. He wasn't like James, holding back, pretending he didn't notice. He noticed. And the moment my attention turned to him, he smirked, like he knew exactly what I was doing. "Nice work out there," I said, stepping closer. Close enough for him to smell my perfume. Close enough for him to want more. Ethan leaned against the truck, arms crossed over his chest, sweat glistening along his collarbone. Nice view from here too. Bold. I liked that. I let my eyes drag over him, slow and deliberate, giving him the same treatment I'd given James, only this time I wasn't testing. I was rewarding, confident. "Aren't you?" Ethan grinned, tilting his head. "Why wouldn't I be?" "Oh." I was going to have fun with him. I reached out, letting my fingers skim his forearm, barely touching. His skin was warm, his pulse just a little too fast. I like confidence. Ethan inhaled sharply, but subtly. "Good, I've got plenty." James was still working in the garage, pretending not to hear, but I saw the way his shoulders tensed, how he glanced up for half a second before looking away. He was listening, and that only made me bolder. I leaned in, just enough to let my breath graze Ethan's ear. "How about a drink?" "My place." His smirk deepened, his eyes flicking to my lips, then down my body, before locking back onto mine. "Thought you'd never ask." From the corner of my eye, I saw James pause, his body tense, his jaw tight. "Guess that means I won't be getting that drink," he muttered. I turned to him, smiling, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make him wonder. "Didn't think you were interested," I said smoothly, then let my lips curve slightly. "But you're more than welcome to join." James didn't answer right away, his fingers flexing at his sides, hesitation flickering in his eyes. I held his gaze for a second longer, then turned back to Ethan. If James wanted me, he was going to have to act like it. With that, I led Ethan across the street to my house. James followed. He didn't say a word, just set his tools down and walked toward my front door. No hesitation this time. Ethan shot me a knowing look as we stepped inside, and I couldn't help but smile. He thought he had this figured out, thought he knew exactly how the night would unfold. He wasn't wrong. The air was thick, charged, the tension nearly buzzing between us in my cozy living room. I didn't rush. I wanted to feel it stretch, let them feel it too. "Whiskey beer?" I asked, reaching for the cabinet in my kitchen. Ethan leaned against the counter, his smirk lazy. "Whatever you're having." James shifted, arms crossed over his chest, still holding back. "Same." I poured the drinks, the sound of ice cracking against the glass breaking the quiet. I took my time, passing them theirs, my fingers brushing against Ethan's hand, then James's, testing, watching, feeling the anticipation coil tighter. Ethan wasted no time getting comfortable, settling onto my leather couch like he belonged there. James stayed standing, fingers flexing around his glass, his jaw tight. I sat between them, crossing my legs, letting the fabric of my dress slide higher over my thighs. "Well," I murmured, taking a slow sip. "This is cozy." Ethan chuckled. "Didn't think you were inviting us in for just a drink." I turned my gaze to him, slow, deliberate. "Did you think I was inviting you in for nothing?" His smirk deepened, his fingers tapping against the arm of the couch. Didn't seem like the type to waste time. I leaned in slightly, just enough to feel the heat between us. "I'm not." James exhaled hard, shifting in his seat. He was still fighting it, still gripping onto whatever restraint he thought he had left. But I saw it the way his breathing had changed. the way his hand twitched like he wanted to reach for me. I turned to him, running my nails lightly along the glass in my lap. "You're awfully quiet," his throat bobbed. "Just taking it in?" Ethan scoffed. "Yeah, and what do you think?" James hesitated, his fingers tightening around his drink. But he didn't answer, so I made the decision for him. I took Ethan's glass from his hand, setting it on the coffee table beside mine. His eyes flickered with something darker, heavier. But he didn't move. He was waiting. I wasn't. I leaned in, closing the space between us, my breath warm against his lips before I finally took what I wanted. The moment our lips met, he responded, hands on my waist, fingers pressing into my skin, pulling me closer. His kiss was eager, deep, his body taut with restrained energy, like he'd been waiting for this just as much as I had. From the corner of my eye, I saw James watching, wanting. I pulled back, just enough to glance at James, my lips tingling, my breath still shallow. He didn't move, but he didn't leave either. I wasn't letting him hold back anymore. I pulled him into a deep kiss, my fingers threading through his hair, guiding him deeper. He let me take control, gripping my waist, responding like he'd been holding back for far too long. Behind me, I could feel Ethan, his breath uneven, his energy restless. He wasn't just watching anymore, he was waiting for permission. I reached for him, my fingers curling into his shirt, tugging him closer until I felt the warmth of his body against mine. Ethan exhaled sharply, his hands settling at my hips, exploring, his fingers tracing the curve of my waist, following the outline of my dress. I turned slightly, smirking. "Don't just stand there." That was all the encouragement he needed. He tilted his head, his lips grazing my neck. Slow, teasing. His hands slid lower, bolder now, making my breath hitch. But I had other plans. I slid my fingers into his hair, guiding him downward, directing him exactly where I wanted him. Ethan groaned against my skin, his hands spreading over my thighs as he settled between them. A soft exhale left my lips as warmth flooded through me, my body humming with anticipation. James watched, his restraint slipping, his grip tightening at my sides. Jealous, I teased, tilting my head to him. His jaw tensed. "You have no idea," I hummed, trailing my fingers down his chest, feeling the heat radiating from him. His hands twitched at his sides, his patience wearing thin. I worked open his belt, letting my touch linger, feeling the weight of his breath as he exhaled sharply. James shuddered under my fingertips, his body tense, his hands gripping my hips, holding me steady. I leaned down, trailing my lips over him, slow, teasing, savouring every reaction, every sharp intake of breath. Ethan's fingers dug into my thighs, his grip possessive, his pace growing more determined, more confident. But between them, I was caught in the centre of it all, finally having exactly what I'd been craving. James let out a low groan, his muscles tightening beneath my touch. I pulled back, just enough to meet his gaze, my lips curving in satisfaction. "Give in to me," I whispered, and he did. His fingers tangled in my hair, his breath ragged, his restraint slipping completely. Ethan wasn't holding back anymore either, his hands tightening, his pace more insistent, his movements more certain. It was intoxicating, overwhelming, and still, I needed more. I pulled away, my lips swollen, my breath uneven, heat pulsing through every inch of me. "Get on the couch," I ordered, my voice breathless but firm. James hesitated for only a second before obeying. He leaned back, his chest rising and falling rapidly, his hands twitching like he was waiting for me to make the next move. I straddled him, pressing my body against his, my fingers tracing along his jaw, my lips grazing his ear. "No more waiting," I murmured. His fingers dug into my hips as I moved, setting the rhythm, taking exactly what I wanted from him. From both of them. Ethan's hands slid up my back, his warmth pressing in behind me, his movements perfectly in sync with mine. James groaned beneath me, his grip tightening. His patience completely gone now. The intensity grew between us, the connection tightening, every movement more electric. But I wanted everything. I shifted, pressing my hands against the couch, arching my back, guiding Ethan in front of me while James steadied himself behind me. Ethan's fingers slid through my hair as I pulled him closer, tasting him, savouring every reaction, every breath. James's hands spread over my hips, holding me steady, his movements deliberate, controlled, deepening the connection between us. Every touch, every motion sent pleasure rippling through me. Their hands guided me, but I was the one leading, setting the pace, demanding more, chasing the edge that felt just within reach. The heat built between us, the rhythm sharpening, deepening, every moment drawing us closer, the tension unbearable, pushing us higher. James's hands held me steady, his voice rough, husky. "You feel incredible." Ethan let out a shaky breath, his head tilting back, completely lost in the moment. I didn't want it to end, not yet. I wanted to stay in this feeling, this electricity, this raw, burning pleasure that flooded through every inch of me. But the moment couldn't last forever. The tension finally reached its peak, the energy overwhelming. It washed over me, consuming every inch of me, warmth spreading through every nerve, my breath broken short, shaky gasps, my body trembling as I held on to them, sinking deeper into the overwhelming heat of it all. The room was filled with the sounds of unsteady breaths, the lingering heat of bodies tangled together, the quiet aftermath of something utterly consuming. For a long moment, none of us moved. The air was thick, charged, the weight of the moment settling between us. I collapsed onto the couch, stretching lazily, satisfaction humming beneath my skin. James let out a low chuckle, dragging a hand through his damp hair. Ethan exhaled, still catching his breath. "Holy." He stopped himself, shaking his head with a breathless laugh. I smirked, looking between them, fully pleased, fully satisfied. They thought they had been in control, but this had always been my game. The next morning, I woke in my bedroom, feeling different, not just satisfied, but renewed. The ache that had been twisting inside me for months, that unbearable hunger, I had finally fulfilled it. And now that I had a taste, I wasn't about to let it go. I stretched lazily, the lingering warmth a reminder of exactly what had happened, of exactly how good it felt to finally take what I wanted. A deep chuckle rumbled beside me. James, still half asleep, his arm heavy across my waist. At the edge of the bed, Ethan smirked, running a hand through his messy hair. "Morning," he murmured, eyes gleaming. "Feeling better," I hummed, trailing my fingers over James's chest, my lips curving. "For now," Ethan let out a breathless laugh. James shifted beside me, tightening his grip, as if he already knew what I was thinking. Because this wasn't a one-time thing. I wasn't done with them yet. As the morning light filtered through the blinds, I lay there, my mind racing. What we'd done was reckless, thrilling, everything I'd craved. But a small part of me wondered if I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. My husband was still out there, working, oblivious. The neighbourhood, with its manicured lawns and nosy neighbours, felt like a stage where I was playing a dangerous role. Yet, the thought of stopping, of going back to those empty nights, was unbearable. I slipped out of bed, leaving James and Ethan to their half-asleep murmurs. In the kitchen, I brewed coffee, the familiar routine grounding me. But my thoughts kept circling back to last night. I'd taken control, claimed what I wanted, and it felt right, too right. The power, the connection, it was addictive. I wasn't just satisfying a need. I was rewriting who I was, who I could be. The sound of footsteps broke my thoughts. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his shirt wrinkled, his hair still mussed. "Coffee smells good," he said, his voice low, playful. He leaned against the counter, too close, his eyes searching mine. Last night was something else. I handed him a mug, my fingers brushing his, deliberate, something worth repeating. He grinned, sipping the coffee, his gaze never leaving me. "You know it." James joined us, his presence quieter, heavier. He took a mug, his eyes flicking between me and Ethan. There was something new in his expression. Caution. Maybe. Or possession. "Your trouble," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. I raised an eyebrow, leaning back against the counter. "And you followed me anyway." He didn't deny it. Instead, he took a slow sip, his eyes locked on mine. The tension from last night hadn't faded. It had shifted, grown more complex. Ethan's easy confidence clashed with James's restrained intensity, and I was caught in the middle, relishing it. Over the next few days, the dynamic settled into something unspoken, but undeniable. Ethan lingered longer at my house, helping with small chores, fixing a loose porch step, mowing the lawn, each task an excuse to be near me. His touches were casual but deliberate, a hand brushing my arm, a smirk when he caught me watching. James, meanwhile, kept his distance during the day, working in his garage, but his eyes followed me when I passed by. At night, he'd show up, wordless, drawn back to my door like a moth to a flame. One evening, as the sun set over the cul-de-sac, I sat on my front porch, sipping iced tea. Ethan sprawled on the steps, his shirt damp from helping me move patio furniture. James was across the street, washing his truck, but his glances kept drifting my way. The air felt heavy, not just with the summer heat, but with the weight of what we'd started. "You think he's jealous?" Ethan asked, nodding toward James, his voice low, teasing. I followed his gaze, watching James's shoulders tense as he scrubbed the truck's hood. "Maybe," I said. my lips curving. "Does it bother you?" Ethan chuckled, leaning closer. "Not if I'm still in the game." I didn't answer right away, letting the moment stretch. James looked up, catching us, his jaw tightening. I waved, slow and deliberate, and he nodded back, his expression unreadable. The push and pull between them was intoxicating. A game I hadn't planned but couldn't resist playing. That night, they both ended up at my house again. The conversation started innocently small talk about the neighborhood, the upcoming block party, but the undercurrent was electric. Ethan's leg brushed mine as we sat on the couch, his fingers grazing my knee. James sat across from us, his eyes dark, watching every move. I could feel the tension building, the unspoken question of who would make the first move. I stood, breaking the silence, and poured another round of drinks. As I handed James his glass, my fingers lingered on his, my eyes holding his gaze. "You're quieter than usual," I said, my voice soft, challenging. He set the glass down, his hand catching mine, his grip firm. "Maybe I'm just figuring you out," Ethan snorted, leaning back. "Good luck with that." I laughed, the sound light but laced with intent. "You both think you've got me pegged, don't you?" James's grip tightened, his thumb brushing my wrist. "I know enough." The room felt smaller, the air thicker. I didn't pull away from James, but I turned to Ethan, my free hand resting on his shoulder. "And you?" Still so confident, his smirk returned, but his eyes were serious, always. What followed was a blur of heat and need, a repeat of that first night but sharper, more deliberate. I led them, just as before. But this time there was no hesitation, no restraint. James's hands were surer, Ethan's touches bolder. They moved with me, around me, each moment building on the last, until the world narrowed to nothing but us. Afterward, we lay tangled on the couch, the quiet settling over us like a blanket. But this time, the silence felt different, heavier, laced with questions neither of them asked. I could sense it in James's tight jaw, in Ethan's restless fingers tapping against my arm. They wanted more, just like I did. But they also wanted to know where this was going. The next morning, I stood at my kitchen window, watching the neighborhood wake up. Kids rode bikes down the cul-de-sac. A neighbor mowed his lawn. The normalcy of it all stark against the chaos I'd invited into my life. My husband would be back in a few weeks, and the thought twisted something in my chest. Not guilt, exactly, but a realization that I'd changed the rules of my own game. Ethan appeared behind me, his hands resting on my shoulders. "You're thinking too much," he said, his voice low, teasing. I turned, meeting his eyes. "Maybe you're not thinking enough." He grinned, unfazed. "I'm thinking about tonight. You in?" Before I could answer, James's truck pulled into his driveway across the street. He stepped out, glancing at my house, his expression unreadable. I felt a pull toward him, toward both of them, but also a flicker of unease. This wasn't just about desire anymore. It was about power, control, and the risk of it all unraveling. Over the next week, the pattern continued. Ethan was a constant presence, his confidence bordering on arrogance. But his attention was addictive. James was quieter, more guarded. But when he was with me, he gave everything. His intensity a counterpoint to Ethan's ease. I thrived on it, on the way they balanced each other, on the way I balanced them, but cracks started to show. One afternoon, as I watered my garden, James approached, his hands in his pockets. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low. I turned off the hose, wiping my hands on my jeans. "About what?" He glanced at Ethan, who was tossing a football with a neighbour's kid down the street. "This. Us. Him. It's complicated." I raised an eyebrow, keeping my tone light. "You didn't seem to mind the other night?" His jaw tightened. But I'm not him. I don't play games forever." The words hit harder than I expected. James wasn't just in this for the thrill, he wanted something more. Something I wasn't sure I could give. I stepped closer, my hand brushing his arm. "Then don't play. Say what you want." He held my gaze, his eyes searching. "I want you, but not like this, not shared." I didn't know how to answer. Before I could, Ethan jogged over, his grin fading as he caught the tension. "Everything okay?" James didn't look at him, just talking. Ethan's eyes narrowed, but he didn't push. Instead, he turned to me, his voice light but pointed. "Your call, as always." The air felt charged. Not with desire, but with something sharper rivalry. Maybe. Or the weight of choices I hadn't fully considered. I smiled, diffusing the moment. Let's not overthink it. Not yet. That night, I invited them both over again, determined to keep control. But the dynamic had shifted. James was quieter, his touches more possessive. Ethan was bolder, pushing boundaries, testing James as much as me. I navigated it, kept them focused on me. But I could feel the undercurrent of tension growing. By the end of the week, I knew something had to give. I stood on my porch, watching the sunset, the neighbourhood quiet except for the hum of a distant lawnmower. James and Ethan were both in my life now, tangled in ways I hadn't planned. My husband's return loomed closer, a deadline I couldn't ignore. I'd wanted freedom, release, but I'd found something else, a power I wasn't sure I could wield forever. I didn't regret it, not a single moment. But as I watched James's truck pull into his driveway, Ethan's laughter echoing from down the street, I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something bigger, messier, more dangerous, and I was ready for it. Some desires should stay hidden, or should they? Was this reckless, or the best decision ever? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear what you think. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.